Republican Congressman Peter King sits on the House Homeland Security Committee, and he is with me now. Congressman, let's start with just this notion of 2020 Democratic hopefuls skipping AIPAC. What does it mean to you?
I think it's shameful because there's no doubt that there's a wing of the Democratic Party, mainly within their base, which is anti-Israel, and it's pro-BDS, and they are putting enormous pressure on these presidential candidates, and they're caving into it. In many ways, the Democratic leadership in the House caved into this type of pressure 2 weeks ago when they wouldn't issue the denunciation of what Congressman Omar said without linking with every other group in the world. So again, I there's people like Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, they certainly are not anti-Israel, and they're not anti-Jewish, obviously. But I think that there's a wing of the party which is putting pressure on these candidates that are going to be running in primaries. And I think it's shameful. AIPAC is a centrist organization. And if you think of it, the public criticism of AIPAC began about a month ago from Congresswoman Omar. And now, right after that, you have MoveOn.org getting involved, and you have these presidential candidates who are failing to show the leadership we need to stand with our closest ally in the Middle East, which is the most dangerous region in the world.
You know, you mentioned BDS, which is that Palestinian-led movement for freedom, justice. It's a combination of divestment and boycotting. I'm wondering, has it become a binary choice that either you were pro-AIPAC or you're pro-BDS? Where are we going with this? And these are elected officials.
Yeah, and again, I mean, people talk about the two-party tradition of supporting Israel. There's also a two-party tradition of speaking at an AIPAC event. Now, nobody has to agree with every stand that AIPAC takes, but the fact is it is a centrist organization, and for none of these candidates to be appearing is really shameful. And it shows, again, that this BDS movement, the pro-Palestinian, critical of Israel movement is really taking hold. Again, I think it's a small faction in the Democratic Party, but it's part of the base. It's the one which right now is driving the debate, and that's very dangerous for the country.
All right, some substance, too, to add with what you were saying. Former Vice President Joe Biden, he hasn't jumped into the 2020 race yet, but might, spoke at the conference in 2016, and even now you've got a bipartisan group still going. No Democrats from the 2020 PAC who are going to be speaking, but you've got Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. For one side, you've got Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer going and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. So it's still a bipartisan event. What do those Democrats do? Is it going to hurt them? I'm just wondering why it's the 2020 PAC.
Because it's the 2020 PAC that has to run in the primaries. And the primaries, in those primaries, usually the hardcore base has a disproportionate impact. And the hardcore base right now in the Democratic Party is part of this pro-Palestinian, pro-BDS movement, which is extremely critical of Israel. And it's an element which does not want to recognize Israel as clearly a strong ally. They are often finding ways to be critical of Israel and are strangely silent when it comes to other abuses in the Middle East. So that's what it is. They're afraid of the primary voter. The primary voter, unfortunately, right now, as we've seen in some of the primaries last year, the primary voter is driven by this left-wing bias.
All right, let's get to the next big news point of the day. President Trump is defending his decision to recognize the Golan Heights region in Israel as Israeli territory. This is a shift in policy for the United States, but he says it actually goes along with what other presidents have wanted. Let's watch.
For years, other presidents have campaigned. They said they're doing this is sovereignty, this is security, this is about regional security.
It's not about Netanyahu's reelection.
No, I wouldn't even know about that. But I would imagine the other side, whoever's against him, is also in favor of what I just did. Every president has said, do that. I'm the one that gets it done.
Congressman King, this is a shift. However, as the president says, it does go also hand in hand with what he did moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. What do you say?
Yeah, I fully agree with that. This was long overdue. The fact is, for, I guess, 50 years now, this has been the fate on the ground, the situation on the ground. Israel has control of the Golan Heights, and it's essential to Israel's security. I can see why back in 1967 there was a thought of having an overall negotiation, but facts on the ground have changed. Iran has emerged as a major power in the Middle East, the major cause for harm and destruction in the Middle East. They control or have strong power over Hezbollah, and Iran and Hezbollah together are in Syria. And for them to be able to use the Golan Heights as a platform to attack Israel is just unsustainable. Israel cannot tolerate that. So what President Trump is doing is realizing the facts on the ground. Facts on the ground are that Israel is there right now. They are controlling it, and the Golan Heights are essential to Israel's security.
All right, real quickly. If it does get done, what happens? If it doesn't get done, what happens?
So at the Golan Heights?
Yes.
I think it's absolutely essential that it be maintained. And the same thing everyone was yelling about when the president moved the embassy to Jerusalem. There were going to be riots throughout the Middle East. You're not going to have that. You're going to have some Arab nations publicly being critical, privately supporting
and
this.
If it doesn't
the Arab
happen?
states now are on Israel's side. If it'll create more disunity in the Middle East, and the countries there will not fully appreciate that the U.S. stands so closely with Israel. This is our way of sending out a marker. We are standing with Israel.
Congressman King of the great state of New York, thank you very much for your time.